Yeah, but the question is more, how do you get there? Do you get there by confrontation, violence?
Oh, is that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
See, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them.
Angela Davis rose to national attention after she was accused of conspiracy in the case of Jonathan Jackson. Attempting to negotiate the release of the Soledad brothers, Jonathan Jackson held hostages at the Marin County courtroom, resulting in a shootout that led to the death of Jackson, a judge, and 2 other people. The weapons used in the incident had been purchased in Davis's name 2 days prior, forcing Davis to flee the state of California after the accusations. She was later acquitted of the charges, but the incident would go on to forever shape the way she was remembered and perceived by the public. Despite this negative public opinion, Angela Davis's voice was invaluable to the Black Power movement and related civil rights causes. Davis was the co-chair of the Soledad Brother Defense Committee at the time of the Jackson case, which is how she became suspected of conspiracy. But her role in this committee was only the beginning of a lifelong interest in prison reform. Professor of philosophy at UCLA, she was forced to resign in 1969 due to her affiliation with the Communist and Black Panther parties. Her dismissal from the university received an enormous amount of publicity, and many prisoners and prison reform advocates contacted her, leading to her involvement in the prison reform movement and the Soledad Brother Defense Committee. Before the case of the Soledad brothers came to their attention, the Black Panther Party mostly advocated on behalf of prisoners arrested for their political beliefs or activities. However, her involvement with the Soledad Brother Defense Committee made Davis aware of the importance of prison reform to the overarching goals of the Black Power movement. She said in a 1989 interview, quote, "As a result of working to free the Soledad brothers, I became increasingly aware of the need to integrate an understanding of the social functions of the prison system into the work that we were doing." After her acquittal, Angela Davis went on to write several books about the prison industrial complex and prison reform. It was her belief that the disproportionate number of African Americans in the prison system is due to racism and more closely resembles a new form of slavery or convict leasing than a well-functioning criminal justice system.
And these prisons are inheritors of a tradition that extends back to the violence-ridden convict lease system and the southern plantation prisons like Angola in Louisiana that, interestingly enough, still exists.
During the Jim Crow era, many southern states implemented convict leasing programs, where prisoners would be leased to private companies and used for cheap labor. These states arrested a disproportionate number of African Americans who would receive much longer sentences than whites who committed the same crimes. Davis argues that the same thing occurs today with the war on drugs, where a disproportionate number of African Americans are charged with drug-related crimes compared to whites and receive much longer sentences than their white counterparts for comparable crimes. In addition to advocating for prison and criminal justice reform, Angela Davis also argued for a radical feminist take on the Black Power movement.
And in some senses, the struggle for women's rights was ideologically defined as a struggle for white middle-class women's rights, pushing out working class and poor women, pushing out Black women, Latinas, and other women of color from the discursive field covered by the category woman. The many contestations over this category helped to produce what we came to call radical women of color feminist theories and practices.
Within the Black Power movement, she advocated that women's issues should be addressed in addition to racial issues by civil rights advocates and the Black Panther Party. Additionally, she and other proponents of black feminism addressed issues with mainstream feminism, especially during the 1960s, which failed to make significant distinctions between the oppression of African American women and white women and failed to adequately address the struggles of African Americans. She argued that feminism needed to address both race and gender dynamics in society.
And this Women's March represents the promise of feminism as against the pernicious powers of state violence. An inclusive and intersectional feminism.
In 1969, 2 Black Panther members, Colin and Massi, were arrested for protesting against the Soledad brothers' release. They were charged with conspiracy to commit genocide. Massi was arrested for protesting against the Soledad brothers' release.
inclusive and intersectional feminism that calls upon all of us to join the resistance to racism, to Islamophobia, to anti-Semitism, to misogyny, to capitalist exploitation.
Davis was and remains an essential figure to myriad civil rights, black empowerment, and feminist causes. Without her voice, the Black Power movement, and with it all its groups and inspired movements, would not have nearly the impact they had on the late 20th century and continue to have today.